Hey everybody, how's it going? Lindsay here. I'm your Mind and Health Mastery Coach, and I wanted to talk about something interesting, very interesting. So many times I've talked about separating yourself outside of what's going on in your current reality. When you're really overwhelmed, when you're really stressed and you don't know how to deal with it, to take a moment, take a step outside of yourself as an observer and kind of look at it from a different perspective. So I wanted to talk about an interesting way to do that. You guys might think it's pretty funny. So I want you to think of your emotions as, and personify them. And the easiest way to do this and fun way to do it is to use Disney characters. Now, I know this might seem a little weird, like, Lindsay, what are you talking about? What are you trying to get at here? But, for example, so when you're feeling angry, really angry, and you can feel it through your body, wherever it might be. For me, when I get angry, my physiology changes and my shoulders get really hunched, and I have a really different posture, and I'm kind of protecting my heart, and I'm, looking from the, tops of my eyes kind of thing, and really frustrated, and everything starts getting really tense. And so when I try to separate that anger from myself and take a step back and really try and figure out what's going on so I can analyze it and like release it, I think of the evil stepmother from Cinderella. That this is a different part of me, that my anger is not my natural self. It is a separate entity from myself that has gripped me and is forcing me to alter, to change, to start thinking in a different way. It's like as if the evil stepmother jumps into my brain, jumps into my body, and that's kind of an interesting way to put it. But I mean, I feel like she's a sadist, and that's not really what my anger comes out as. But I feel like that's the hold that this personified version of my anger has on me. So, I see the evil stepmother is almost taking pleasure in being terrible. Obviously, as you know in the movie, that's kind of her jam, her deal. And so I find that she's trying to, that idea of that character is infiltrating and has a relation to my anger. So when I step outside of myself and I see that the evil stepmother has taken over, and it's not like I treat my kids like a sadist. That's not what I'm saying. It's just a very interesting way to understand your negative emotions. So when I see that this person this character is gripping me, I realize, like, that's not me. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. I'm just being implanted with this idea of this character who is really angry. And I see when I visualize what she's like, her posture, her demeanor, her facial expressions, and it makes me really frustrated. It's like, no. That's not what I want. I don't want to be like that. And then it's kind of easier to separate yourself from it. So another emotion that you can think of as personifying in a Disney character. I mean, for example, with anger, there's so many different characters that you can possibly use to create this observer perspective from. So, for example, like there's Scar from The Lion King. He's a sociopath. He's a little crazy. King Triton's very overbearing and very controlling. And the Queen from Snow White, she's a narcissist, she's vain, she's selfish. So what does your anger relate to in terms of a Disney character? Because then you can, in separating from it, it kind of becomes silly. And you realize that these feelings and sensations that you're having, they're quite silly, and that you're not your natural state of being. They're not your highest self. So when you look at sadness, for example, and you personify it to a Disney character, the first one that comes into my head personally is Dumbo. When he sees his mom, and there's that horribly sad song that's playing, and he's like, embracing her trunk, and it's just like, oh my God, it's so sad. So if that sadness is if I'm experiencing sadness and it overwhelms me, I take a step back and I think of that character. And what makes me kind of wake up and realize is like that character needs something. That sadness, that Dumbo needs something, and it's just needing love and connection, right? So that's kind of an interesting way of how I personify sadness as a Disney character. And that you can go through a barrage of all your negative emotions, and fear, for example. I see a character like that's really fearful as like Piglet or Flounder. They're very anxious and always worried about stuff. And then in my head, when I think of Piglet and how when fear starts to kind of overwhelm me or anxiety starts to overwhelm me, if I think of it as Piglet, it's like, Piglet, take a breath, relax, everything is going to be okay. And if you can have that separate disconnect from those emotions, then you can serve yourself in a higher way. Now, I know this sounds really, really crazy, but I want you to realize that your emotions that you have, when they are negative, they are not you. They are not you. Your natural state of being is happy, is joy, is content, is love, is bliss. And that is your natural state and right to feel that way always, always. And just there's other things around us in terms of our environment, our interactions, our beliefs, our ideas that have turned into beliefs, that have turned into habits, that create this other part of ourselves that's actually not authentic and not true and not real. So if you can have fun with your emotions, in this sense, this is what I want to give to you today. If you can have fun with your emotions and personify them as Disney characters, what would they be? Take some time, get your journal out, and start writing it down. Because it's really interesting when you take that outsider look and you realize how silly it is. And then you can realize what they need. So for example, in the more villainous characters, the darker characters in Disney, like, the queen from Snow White or Scar, King Triton, like, what happened in their lives? Well, you think of King Triton, like he's got, there's no... They don't even talk about Ariel's mother at all. And so he's assuming he's a widowed father, and he's got 500 daughters. He's going to be a little overbearing. He's going to be a little stressed. He's got to manage a kingdom and all this stuff. Like, there's always underlying things to result in the way that they act and how they react. And, I also see King Triton as having like violent outbursts. He gets really, really angry and enraged. And so if you take a step back and look at like what went on in their lives that caused them to be that way. And there's a really amazing author. His name is Gregory Maguire. And so he's kind of made the adult version of fairy tales. So for example, he's the gentleman who created Wicked, and Wicked as the musical, and it's the tale of the Wicked Witch of the West and her kind of like origin story. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and it coincides with The Wizard of Oz very well. And how, in the musical version anyway, I'm not too sure about the book because I haven't read the book, but, you know, an Elphaba's story of why she's green and why she's the way that she is totally nothing like what you see in The Wizard of Oz. Like, you just see this, like, horrible, evil witch who wants these ruby red slippers and wants to, like, take control. Well, how'd she get that way? You know, she wasn't born that way, right? And there's some other great books. The Ugly Stepsister is one, and that's where it talks about the one of the stepsisters, her perspective in Cinderella and what went on for her. And oh, there's another one that I read. Oh, Mirror, Mirror. This one is excellent, by Gregory Maguire. Oh my goodness, Mirror, Mirror. One of the things that I loved so much about this book is that the seven dwarfs, so it's the story of Snow White, but from a different perspective. So the seven dwarves were actually 8. And they use different words for, you know, happy, dopey, sleepy, grumpy. They use a little bit more advanced words. I don't really remember what they are. But there used to be an 8th dwarf. And when all the dwarfs were together, it was like they were one person. And if you think of the different avenues of personality, sleepy, dopey, grumpy, happy, sneezy, you know, we all kind of have that within us. And so what ended up happening was Snow White's father went to go on a quest, and the 8th dwarf needed to go after him. I haven't read this book, sorry. I haven't read this book in such a long time, so I don't remember why he needed to go after him. But the greatest thing about this is that the 7 remaining dwarves, they felt incomplete. So they created a mirror, which is the magic mirror, the mirror on the wall, where they could see the 8th dwarf, where they still felt whole. Oh, I thought that idea and that perspective was like so brilliant. So I know this is a really weird concept, but I always like to bring different ways of thinking about life and about ourselves that helps us to advance and to become ourselves. You know, I wanted to say the greatest version of ourselves, but we really are. We are underneath a lot of layers. We are that greatest version of ourselves already. It's just about remembering. You know, they talk about being woke and being awake and that sort of thing. And it's just waking up to your authentic self and waking up to your true you, and realizing all these extra emotions of negativity, they're not you at all. You know, they're just masks that we wear. They're filters in which we see life in a different perspective that doesn't need to be. So I hope you enjoyed this really silly perspective on how to negate through your negative emotions. And I would love for you to comment about how you personify your negative emotions with Disney characters, and, you know, what different awareness you have as a result of doing that. So I hope you all have a fantastic and wonderful day, and I will talk to you very soon. Take care. Bye.